Everybody, welcome back to the Metal Mill 52 workshop. My name is Bill and this is my shop. We're working on an LBSC Tich locomotive, and in this episode, yet another episode about the tanks. Here they are. They're not quite done yet, but I'm going to declare victory for the purpose of wrapping up this little mini series about making the tanks. A lot of great detail in this episode. This is why I'm releasing it now. I do have a little bit of finishing work to do. If you watch till the end, you'll see what I'm talking about. But this would be a very useful episode for anybody that's contemplating building a project like this, for fitting the hand pump in the tanks, fitting the tubing, matching that up to your locomotive, putting the water outlet drain fittings and the fitting for the bypass valve in here. A lot of great detail in this episode, so I hope you enjoy it. As I said, I'm gonna publish this now and start working on the cab. That'll be the next episode, fitting the final touches of fitting the cab to the tanks. So without any further ado, I'll turn you over to the detail here. If you have a question, please ask. If you don't have a question but you want to encourage me to keep publishing these things, please give me a thumbs up and ask any questions, make any comments that you like. I appreciate all of it, and I appreciate everybody being along with me for this journey. Thank you so much. Hope you have a great week, and we'll see you later. Figured out an accurate way to mark the hole for the tube that goes from the hand pump to the left-hand clack. Next thing to do is to make a mock-up of the actual pipe. Luckily, I've bought some 5/32 inch or 4mm copper tube here, and I've put a bend in it. I've got a handy little bender. Let me show you that. This thing works great. I've showed this before. I think I got it off of eBay, and it's much smaller than your average bender. And I think I was watching a Keith Appleton video and he was talking about this, but it's a beautiful piece of gear. So I fitted the clack in. I put some washers in to make sure it fits correctly, and then I've taken a piece of wire. It's basically thick house construction copper wire, and bent it into place so you can see the bends that are involved here. It's not rocket science, and there is enough room with the tank pressed up all the way against the side. There will be enough room to run the tube directly along the outside there. That's what I was concerned about. So I'm going to make and fit that tube here before I drill the hole in the back, because that'll be critical to how we handle the tube itself. But pretty happy to get that part done. That's the only tube that I haven't made. All the other ones I had pre-made, and covered those in previous videos. I center drilled and drilled a number 41 hole, just as LBSC so eloquently describes, and I test fit just like he describes, and sure enough, the drill, if you can see that, there we go, goes directly into the hole. I mean directly into the fitting on the back of the pump. So I think that's perfect. Now I can enlarge the hole to fit the pipe that I just made here, and I will test fit this in just a minute. Here's the back with the number 22 hole drilled, which is exactly the size of a 5/32 inch tube, and I did work it out with the little rat tail file here, and now you can see the piece of wire that I used as my gauge for creating the tube. So just after deburring and just a gentle filing, I can stick this tube through, and the nice thing is I can manipulate it into a place where that I can solder on the end fitting. I'll have to put the nut and then the copper ferrule on the end there, and I'll be able to mate that up to the water pump. So now I can put this all in place and test fit it on the locomotive. I'll show you that in just a second. Alright, here's the basic fit. I probably should have left a little bit of extra length to the pipe to account for this distance, the arcing over from the tank up, but I think once I silver solder on the fitting on here, and I'll have a chance to anneal the entire tube, it'll be a lot softer and a lot easier to bend. So anyway, I am pleased with the fit overall. You can see it fits through there It'll be easy enough to seal. And there is a little extra, more than enough extra copper tube here to provide the little extra length on the other side. So pretty confident that this will work out. If not, I have extra copper tube. Okay, I plan on using number 5-40 screws to hold the tank to the bottom there, to the running board. So I've drilled a couple of holes, had to remove the pump, and as you can see I've got it bolted down, or clamped down in place. I put a wooden plank underneath there and drilled the 2 holes. So I think that's going to be sufficient. When I remove everything now, I wanted to take a picture of the setup in case this would help anybody in the future. But I'll take it out now, clean all the chips out, and then try putting it in place with some bolts and show you what that looks like. Here's the left-hand tank with the tubing in place, just gently set in place, and the side screwed back in place. I just wanted to double check everything, the fit, before I started soldering things. The next thing I need to do, because it occurs to me that the water transfer bung that gets soldered into this side, that could be in the way of the copper tubing. So, you know, that tubing's going to need to be bent around it. So I need to solder that tube in place before I proceed with anything else. So that'll be the next step. Here I've used my beloved pillar tool to drill a 1/4 inch hole. I went a 5/16 inch up from the bottom and 7/16 inch back from the front. So that should clear at least the inside angle, and as you can see it does not clear the bottom angle, but it should be just above the base of the tank. So that'll be perfect, and I've got it all bolted back together to make it rigid for the drilling. Now my plan is to unbolt everything and then silver solder that bung or fitting inside here so that that will stay in place when I soft solder everything together. The detail I was particularly curious about was the amount of space for that tube and to go underneath the boiler there. So I've put the little the 1/4 inch brass tube in place right here. I've just stuck it in. It hasn't been soldered yet to the inner portion, but there's clearance there. It looks like it's going to be fine. Okay, here's the first. This is the left-hand tank. The water nozzle is silver soldered in place, and I used the safety seal of 56 with the white flux. I've had good luck with that, so I'm going to let this just sit, cool down, and I'll put it in the pickle tank and we'll test and see what, I'll leave it overnight. We'll see what kind of a finish we have tomorrow. Okay, here's the excuse me, silver soldered water transfer pipe. You can see I got good fillet all the way around. I got a little blob on the opposite side I'll need to file off, but very good, it's a very solid connection there. I gave it a strong tug. I couldn't get it to budge, so pretty happy with that. Now I've put flux on the assembly points basically, and on the screws, just for some ordinary soft solder. I'm going to try to solder all those joints and solder the screws in place for the vertical ones that hold the water pump and the vertical ones that point down that will bolt it to the running board. So that'll be next. Bring you back when I have that done. Okay, everything worked out good. This is after it's soaked in the pickle, and then I scrubbed it in with clean soapy water as well. Got a nice seal, as you can see, along the tank base, and over here it's hard to see, but it sealed up that area in the front there and along here pretty nicely. The screws were okay too. The only part that didn't work was the little stainless steel screws in the base that hold the base to the running board. So I went back, cleaned it, dried it, and put some more flux and a little bit more of the soft solder on there. I used a little torch to direct the tiny flame, and that worked out nicely. So I'm just going to let this cool overnight, and we'll check how secure those screws are in the morning, and I'll let you know. Alright, little progress update I'm really pleased with. Let me show you. I've got the the pump, it's just sitting in position here with the bolts that are through the base. See if I can lift it off. There we go. So I've soldered those stainless steel bolts in to the base, and I've got the pump sitting on the 4 soldered lugs, and I did drill them, oversize the holes in the bottom, the base of the pump just a little bit to ease the fit, but it fits on there, so I'm going to call that good. Now let me bring it over to the light here. Excuse me. Show you a little better. This is how I had it soldered. I did have to readdress that one last night, actually both of them, but anyway, it's on, it's solid. I've given all of the screws a tug. They're all in place firmly, nothing is loose. I'm going to have to grind down the bases of these flathead screws a little bit to clear the bottom, but it'll be okay. So the next step right now is to clean this up some more. I'm going to soak it in the tank for a little while, wash it, clean it off, and then hit it with some sanding just to kind of deburr inside here. There's a little bit of debris left over. I think for putting this together with the outside portion, I think I'm going to use, instead of soldering, I'm going to use a different compound that I have used successfully. Let me show you this stuff. It's called Pour Patch, P-O-R patch. It's basically a filler seam sealer construction adhesive from the makers of POR 15, and I've used this stuff extensively in automotive repair and in sealing the tender tank on my large locomotive, and I have a good quantity of it left. It's pretty expensive, but it does seem to be still soft inside there, so hopefully I'll use that to seal the remaining seams on here, which I'm not going to do until after I take care of soldering that pipe together. So that would be the next step. Clean this thing up and then get that outlet pipe situated. Alright, next thing I want to do is to really finish fitting that tube in before I button this side up all together. So I'm talking about the outlet tube that come out the back of the pump. So what I'm doing is bolting in, at least just with the 2 bolts that I can easily access, hold the pump in place, and put this side cover back in place so that I can get the fit just right, and silver solder the connections together. I'll show you what I mean in a minute. After some judicious filing and fitting and so forth, I think I'm finally ready now to silver solder on the ferrules, the nuts, put the nuts in place, and finish this piping. Let me show you what we got here. Take the lid off here. So the pump is in place, it's bolted down. Everything on this side is all soldered, and the leak protection is done. It's not done over there. This panel is still removable. So let me show you the pipe is just stuck in place there. And it's all the way forward. I ended up trimming a little space off of that, and it runs down in between the tank and the boiler wrapper there, and is very close. It's a little bit inboard of where it needs to be, but what I plan to do is to anneal this copper tube, and when I put the fittings on there, and that way I'll be able to bend it, make the final bend, and get it into place. So time to do some soldering on that pipe and some annealing, and I'll do one more fit, I think, and if everything checks out, then we'll put this tank together. So here we have the inner place with the silver soldered bushing on it, and then the pipe. I've already soldered on the end fitting on the inside, but I just wanted to show this. Make sure you set it up this way before you solder the fittings on, because it's got to be through the hole, and you've got to have the nuts on both sides. So I'm going to let this cool a little bit. I'll dunk it in the pickle tank for a little while and clean everything up, and then we'll do a final test fit before hopefully final assembly. Alright, this left-hand tank is basically done. I've got the tube in position, I've got it tightened up all the way, and it's tightened in the back there as well. Everything fits, thank goodness. And what I'm going to do, and tomorrow, or when I get done with the other tank, I'm going to use the POR 15 pour patch sealer for sealing the opposite side and any of the spots on the bottom here. So I'm going to leave this one just like it is for now, and I've decided that tomorrow I'm going to make things a lot simpler for the right hand side tank. I will just silver solder in the inside transfer tube and silver solder in the two bolt down screws in the bottom as well. And from that point, I'll be able, there's really no other, and silver solder in the back fitting here. And after that, there's really no other stuff that has to get done. So I'm going to do the pour patch on this one as well. It'll be a lot simpler than the soft solder mess, simpler and less time consuming. So I'm going to do the pour patch on that one. I'll do them both at the same time, and then we will be basically done with the tanks. So I'll bring you back for some of the details on the right hand tank tomorrow. Alright, with the right hand tank, I'm laying out the holes. The first one is easy for the transfer tube. The one that's going to be the supply line for the bottom of the axle pump, it's a little bit bigger of a fitting, and what I think I'm going to do is put it back further, like 1 3/8 inches back from the front, rather than really close here, because there's going to be a nut going on there. I think giving myself a little extra room would be a smart idea. So we'll see how that goes. The other thing, speaking of room, here's the bypass valve itself. I've taken the top and the bottom fittings off of it. The reason I wanted to show this is I've got this bushing here, this brass bushing to solder into the tank, but I've also got to be able to twist this in, and I want the ends of it to clear the outside of the tank there, so it can be removable. So I just wanted to show that I'm going to put the hole for that 1/4 inch down, just like they call for it, but directly in the center, so that there's enough room for the fitting to be unscrewed from the bushing there. And I'll use shorter screws here. Okay, I'm pretty stoked. I got all the fittings soldered into the right hand tank, and I just put the covers on top to see if they fit okay. I'm going to need to relieve this little area so it fits around the bypass valve. Let me show you in here. So I got the bypass valve screwed in there. The stainless steel screws in the bottom are silver soldered to the bottom of the tank, and then I've also got the fittings are silver soldered in. I'll show you that from an outside view in a while, but they're soldered in, silver soldered in there very securely, as is this bushing here. So that was all that was needed for the right hand tank, and it fits good. Excited about that. Here's the left hand tank. So now I've got everything good to go. I think tomorrow I'll be able to take these things apart and start applying the pour patch, and we should be closer to being in business. With the tanks basically complete, now is the time to put the pour patch inside as the leak sealing. So here's the right hand tank that we just finished. I've disassembled it and cleaned it with some acetone, and I've got my gloves ready to go. You do not want to get this stuff on your hands. It'll never come off. And I've got the left hand tank over there. It still has the pump and the tube all assembled here. I'm going to decide to do them one at a time just for ease of reassembly. So it'll probably take me one night, to do each one. So I decided to start with the simple one, the right hand tank first. Well, I finished up using the pour patch to bond the seams on the right hand tank, and also to insulate over the screw holes. Although I had soldered them in place, I wanted to use the pour patch as well. The fittings have been silver soldered in with the stay silv, and they're in the back as well. So the tanks are basically, at least the right hand one is essentially done. I do need to finish up a little bit on both of them. I'll show you why. The pour patch I had used was kind of old. I actually had to cut the bottom off in order to scrape out the remaining soft usable part, and it's hard as a rock now. So I had to order a little bit more, and it's going to take a few days. So consequently, I'm going to basically declare victory on the tanks right now, publish this video for today. There's a lot of good detail in this segment about making the tanks. Meanwhile, while I wait for my new tube of pour patch to come in the mail, I'm going to start working on the cab itself. So wanted to show, this is a nice way to wrap up the episode on the tanks anyway. Show the details, because that's kind of what I'm all about anyway, trying to help somebody that's trying to build one of these things or something like it and doesn't have anything to compare it to or anybody to ask about it. So you can see the actual builder's view, and I'm really pleased with how these things have come out so far. Obviously there's a little bit of, after the sealing, there'll be a little bit of final assembly work on them, but that'll be perfect to do that in at the same time as I'm fitting the cab top to the boiler and all the framework of the locomotive. So thanks again everybody for your patience and your interest in this project. If you have a question, please ask. I'll do my best to answer. If you don't have a comment or a question, if you wouldn't mind, please give me a thumbs up, because it does motivate me to continue on the project. So we'll see you soon, and thank you again. Have a great one, everybody.